What if I told you that the most dominant two-way player in baseball history just walked onto a pickleball court for the very first time, and immediately left his teammates speechless? Not because of a home run. Not because of a 100 miles per hour fastball. But because of something nobody expected from Shohei Ohtani. Mookie Betts, a man who has played pickleball competitively, who has dedicated hours to perfecting his game off the field, watched Ohtani pick up a paddle for the first time and said 4 words that nobody in that room expected. "Wait a minute, you've exceeded my expectations." That sentence wasn't flattery. It wasn't the kind of polite compliment teammates throw at each other to keep the mood light. Coming from Mookie Betts, a man who takes pickleball seriously enough to enter tournaments, those words carried real weight. But here's what makes this story so much deeper than just a funny moment between two Dodgers superstars. Because once you understand who Shohei Ohtani really is, once you understand how his mind works, how his body responds, and how he approaches literally everything he touches, this moment stops being surprising at all. In fact, it was completely inevitable. To understand what happened on that pickleball court, you first need to understand Mookie Betts. Mookie is not a casual pickleball player. Among MLB players who have embraced the sport, Betts is considered one of the most serious. He doesn't just play for fun between games. He studies footwork. He practices his serve. He has talked openly about how pickleball sharpens his hand-eye coordination and keeps his reflexes sharp during the long grind of a 162-game season. So when Mookie invites someone to play pickleball, it's not a throwaway gesture. It means something. When Ohtani first stepped onto the court, those around him expected the scene that usually plays out when a beginner picks up a paddle for the first time. Awkward swings. Misjudged bounces. Nervous laughter. The kind of stumbling start that even gifted athletes experience when they encounter a sport that is completely foreign to them. That is not what happened. From the very first exchanges, something was different. Ohtani's footwork was instinctively correct. His paddle angle was clean. His reaction time, that same lightning-fast reaction time that allows him to hit 100 miles per hour pitches, translated immediately into the fast, compact world of pickleball rallies. Betts watched. And watched. And then he stopped playing for a moment. "Wait a minute, you've exceeded my expectations." The court went quiet. And then Betts did something that nobody expected him to do in that moment. He turned to Ohtani and extended an invitation on the spot, to participate in an actual pickleball tournament. Not as a joke. Not as a casual suggestion. As a genuine invitation from one serious competitor to another. Here is what people who only watch Ohtani from the stands don't fully understand. Shohei Ohtani does not approach anything casually. This is a man who, since his teenage years at Hanamaki Higashi High School, has operated with a level of intentionality that most professional athletes never reach in their entire careers. His former coaches have spoken about how, even as a 16-year-old, Ohtani kept detailed notebooks. Not just about pitching mechanics or batting stances, but about nutrition, sleep, recovery, and mental preparation. He didn't become a two-way superstar by accident. He became one because his brain is wired to analyze, absorb, and optimize every single physical skill he encounters. Think about what pickleball actually demands from an athlete. Quick lateral movement. Precise hand-eye coordination. The ability to read your opponent's paddle angle and body position in fractions of a second. Fast twitch muscle reactions. Strategic shot placement. Now think about what Ohtani has spent his entire life mastering. Reacting to a baseball traveling at 100 miles per hour from 60 feet away. Placing a pitch precisely at the corner of the strike zone. Reading a batter's weight distribution to predict their swing. The physical and cognitive tools that make Ohtani the greatest baseball player alive are almost perfectly transferable to pickleball. The only question was always going to be how quickly those tools would activate on a new court. The answer, as Mookie Betts discovered, was immediately. Sports scientists have a term for what Ohtani demonstrated on that pickleball court. They call it athletic transfer, the ability of an elite athlete to apply the motor skills, spatial awareness, and competitive instincts developed in one sport to a completely different sport with remarkable speed. But Ohtani's case goes beyond standard athletic transfer. What separates him is something his former mentor Yu Darvish once pointed to during the 2023 WBC. Darvish, who has seen elite athletes up close for over 2 decades, said something about Ohtani that has stayed with everyone who heard it. He wasn't praising his fastball velocity or his home run distance. He was talking about something far more fundamental. I think he's truly amazing as a person. What Darvish was describing, without using scientific language, was Ohtani's extraordinary capacity for deliberate awareness. The ability to be fully present in every single moment of practice, competition, and even rest. To extract maximum learning from every new experience. When Ohtani picked up that pickleball paddle, he wasn't just swinging it randomly. His brain was already mapping the weight, the grip, the bounce geometry of the ball, the optimal swing path. Within minutes, those calculations had already begun translating into muscle memory. This is not superhuman. But it is extraordinarily rare. Former Nippon Ham Fighters teammate Kensuke Kondo once revealed a story about Ohtani that perfectly illustrates this quality. When Ohtani was focused on a new skill or a new physical challenge, he would sit quietly, sometimes for long periods, simply visualizing. Running the movement through his mind before his body ever attempted it. By the time his body acted, his mind had already practiced hundreds of times. That pickleball court never stood a chance. Let's talk about what Mookie Betts actually did in that moment, because it matters more than it might seem. Betts didn't just compliment Ohtani. He invited him into his world. For Betts, pickleball is not a hobby. It's a competitive outlet, a mental refresh, and a physical training tool all rolled into one. He has spoken about how seriously he takes the sport and how much it means to him outside of baseball. Inviting someone to participate in a tournament is an act of genuine respect, the acknowledgement that the person across the net is worthy of real competition. In that single sentence, "Wait a minute, you've exceeded my expectations," Betts communicated something profound. He was not seeing Ohtani the baseball player in that moment. He was seeing Ohtani the athlete. The competitor. The person who shows up to every single thing he does with a quiet, unstoppable excellence. And the Dodgers locker room took notice. This is a team filled with elite athletes. World Series champions. Gold Glove winners. Players who have competed at the highest levels of professional sport for decades. And yet, the whispers that come out of that clubhouse again and again always circle back to the same theme. Ohtani is different. Not because of the numbers, though the numbers are historically unprecedented. But because of how he carries himself. Because of how he prepares. Because of how, even in a casual pickleball game with a teammate, he shows up with a level of focus and physical intelligence that leaves experienced competitors saying, "Wait a minute." Here is what this pickleball story is really about, and it has nothing to do with pickleball. It's about the standard that Shohei Ohtani holds himself to every single day. A standard that doesn't switch off when the baseball season ends. A standard that doesn't take days off during spring training. A standard that apparently doesn't even pause when a teammate hands him a pickleball paddle for the first time. Yu Darvish, now serving as an advisor to Samurai Japan, has tried to communicate this standard to the next generation of Japanese baseball players. When he stands in the bullpen at training camp in Miyazaki, working with young pitchers on their grip and their mechanics, the example he keeps returning to is Ohtani. But critically, and this is something Darvish has been very deliberate about, he doesn't tell young players to copy Ohtani's slider. He doesn't tell them to eat the exact same pre-game meal of rice, 5 boiled eggs, broccoli, and salad. He doesn't tell them to mimic his two-way approach. He tells them to study how Ohtani operates. The intentionality. The preparation. The willingness to invest in every small detail, nutrition, sleep, mental visualization, body management, because those small details compound over time into something extraordinary. The pickleball court moment is a perfect illustration of that philosophy in action. Ohtani didn't walk onto that court trying to impress Betts. He wasn't performing for an audience. He simply approached a new physical challenge the way he approaches everything, with full attention, with natural competitive instinct, and with the physical tools built by years of disciplined preparation. The result was inevitable. Now, the question everyone is asking: will Shohei Ohtani actually accept Mookie Betts' tournament invitation? On one hand, Ohtani is famously protective of his body during the season. Every activity is evaluated through the lens of one central question: does this serve my performance on the baseball field? He is not reckless. He is not impulsive. Every decision is calculated. On the other hand, this is a man who pitched and batted in the same game at the highest level of professional baseball for years. A man who, at the 2023 WBC, carried an entire nation on his shoulders and delivered one of the most dramatic moments in baseball history. A man who signed a $700 million contract and then showed up to spring training looking even more locked in than before. If anyone could walk into a pickleball tournament with zero prior competitive experience and make a serious run, it's Ohtani. Betts clearly believes so. And Betts does not extend invitations lightly. Mookie Betts walked onto that pickleball court expecting to show his teammate a fun new sport. He walked off it with a genuine competitor standing across the net. 4 words changed the dynamic of that entire afternoon. Wait a minute, you've exceeded my expectations. But for those of us who have been paying attention to Shohei Ohtani, truly paying attention, not just watching the home runs and the strikeouts, but watching the discipline, the diet, the preparation, the quiet and relentless standard he holds himself to every single day, those 4 words weren't a surprise. They were just confirmation. Confirmation that greatness is not contained to one field, one court, or one sport. Confirmation that when you build yourself the way Ohtani has built himself, from the inside out, from the nutrition to the mindset to the muscle memory, excellence follows you everywhere you go. Even onto a pickleball court on a random afternoon with your Dodgers teammate. Even then. That is the standard of Shohei Ohtani. And that is why Mookie Betts wasn't just impressed. He was amazed.